Every Pokemon has an ability they are born with. Some create guards of wonder to protect from a foe's blow. Others give huge power to give the Pokemon a strength beyond their species. Some manipulate the weather itself to eliminate their weakness and put pressure upon the unlucky opponent. And there are additional effects to certain abilities that affect the game outside of battle that you may not be aware of. I'm going to not only explain every single Pokemon ability from Generation 3, but I will also explain why a Pokemon would have the ability through lore and science. Hi there, I'm Krillic, and to clarify, we are going to be traveling through Generation 3 as we talk about each ability that exists within Pokemon, starting with the most common. We'll talk about the mechanics and make sense of those mechanics with, again, lore and science. So why don't I simply start explaining what a Pokemon ability is. Now I'm using Pokemon Database for the basis of my info, and abilities introduced in Generation 3 Ruby Sapphire are special attributes given to each Pokemon that can aid them in battle. Many abilities act as a power-up by increasing a move or stat. Others introduce a third-party effect like a weather condition. Some abilities can even hinder a Pokemon battle. Each Pokemon can only have one ability, however, some have the option between two different abilities, and the choice is random, and each ability is actually equally likely. However, there are 308 single ability Pokemon and 355 dual ability Pokemon, meaning they can only have one ability or they can choose between the two. Now, there are other abilities simply known as hidden abilities, which is a rare ability that Pokemon normally do not have access to, which were introduced via Generation 5 through the old online feature known as Dream World. Hidden ability is commonly abbreviated as HA! Most Pokemon encountered in the games will not have a hidden ability, but usually there are special encounter methods where Pokemon can have said hidden ability. Certain event Pokemon and special in-game Pokemon may also have their hidden ability. Alternatively, items such as ability patches can be used to change a Pokemon's ability in the modern day. Bless Arceus for quality of life. So with the basics out of the way, how about we get started with the abilities that originate in Generation 3. 47 Pokemon zip through the water with Swift Swim. And again, I have no intention of going over every single Pokemon with these abilities. Instead, I'll actually give common examples and special cases. Now, Swift Swim doubles the Pokemon's speed when it is raining. Our aquatic Pokemon such as Feebas and Lotad have this. It also includes the Buizel line. It's fairly easy to explain considering all the Pokemon that have this ability either live near the water, in the water, or are generally just strong swimmers. I do find it very cool to see Mega Swampert here, which is arguably one of my favorite Megas of all time, because I don't like regular Swampert. I just don't. I don't like its design, and every Pokemon is not made for everybody. It's okay to accept that. I'm not going to bash the Pokemon. But when I saw it go from this, kind of a flat lad to just anchor arms out here, I love it. I love the design. I love how it's used. I love those little organs on its body, which, yes, those are organs that are on the outside of its body that it uses to release pressure so that way it can propel itself or its fist forward. It is beautiful. On to the next ability, as it takes more than one good hit to take down the 47 Pokemon who have the ability Sturdy. Sturdy allows the Pokemon to survive with 1 HP if attacked at full HP, with an attack that would otherwise knock it out. It also prevents one-hit KO moves, Fissure, Horndraw, Guillotine, or Sheer Cold. If Sturdy activates before the final hit of a multi-hit move, such as Fury Swipes, the subsequent hit will still deal damage and therefore cause the Pokemon to faint. Sturdy does not prevent self-inflicted KO moves, such as Self-Destruct, Explosion, and Final Gambit. In other words, you can't have your Graveler and eat it too. Every Pokemon that has this is at least a Rock or Steel type in part, even including Stone Mask, Ogerpon actually, and Dwebble. The only exception to this rule is the Pokemon that is the smallest yet tied as one of the heaviest, Cosmoem. I mean, it is kind of like the creation of the universe. You crack it open and it's going to explode into Solgaleo or Lunala. That's the whole purpose of it. Let's be real, this is another easy one to explain, as what are rocks, stone, steel known for being sturdy. You build your buildings with it, you build structures, architecture, so on and so forth. So it makes sense that if they're at full quality, it takes more than just one good hit to completely destroy it. And honestly, this ability is one of the #1 reasons that I am always afraid in a Nuzlocke when I go up against certain Pokemon, because the last thing I need, because I'm already always under-leveled, because I like a good dramatic, fight, is for some rock type to survive the hit and then immediately explode on its turn, ending whatever Pokemon had a chance of surviving. I like dramaticism. I like the big risk, big play. It makes it fun. If that ends up sacrificing a Pokemon, you know what? They go to the farm. They go to the ranch. They just don't fight anymore. That's just it. 46 Pokemon make your very willpower shake with the ability Intimidate. Intimidate lowers the attack of all opponents by 1 stage as they cower when the ability bearer switches in, including at the start of battle. Stats can be lowered to a minimum of -6 stages each, and that's important going forward. Basically, every 2 stages either doubles or cuts in half. Now, Intimidate does have an effect outside of battle, and in this case, if a Pokemon with Intimidate is leading the party, wild Pokemon are 50% less likely to be lower level. This is something, and amongst all the other outside of battle effects, I had actually never known. Outside of pickup, I just don't know any of them whatsoever and how they affect the world, so this is a learning experience for both of us. Now, Intimidate is actually very typical of a Pokemon that's, well, intimidating. I mean, fit with scary faces, imposing bodies, or even a demeanor that would instill fear into anyone. Or all 3 if we look at Pokemon such as Gyarados, who has this ability. Because, yeah, I have literally always been personally intimidated in real life by Gyarados and its power. It's always been a powerful Pokemon. It always will be a powerful Pokemon. If that ever changes, we have a problem. Now, we also see Snubbull and Gramble here, as even their Dex entries will state that they have visually scary faces, and they actually feel bad whenever people run away because of those scary faces. Though this is why they are also used as good guard dogs near daycares to scare off Sneasel or any other areas where they need to scare off robbers, burglars, so on and so forth. We also see Intimidate on Masquerain, as it has patterning on its antennae that resemble large, angry eyes that would actually scare other predators away or even make its prey freeze in place. Intimidating patterning or coloring is actually incredibly useful in the wild, so much so that the Scarlet King Snake has adapted to have a similar patterning to the incredibly venomous Coral Snake. Also, that way every other creature that sees this coloring would steer clear of it. Alternatively, Tauros gives off its own form of intimidation, not just through size, but also through how it acts, which is by stamping its hooves before it would charge. This creates a very recognizable sound, just like what a rattlesnake sound sounds like, despite never ever being near one, probably. But either way, it tells you that, and every other creature, that you need to steer away from it. You are going to back away, or you are going to be gored by a Tauros. Other Pokemon such as Squawkabilly, I wasn't expecting to see here, but they are seen as like a greaser gang type Pokemon. The type that you see with the leather jackets and the pompadours. So we're going to see them a couple of times with abilities we wouldn't otherwise expect. And finally, Quillfish will just simply puff up to intimidate enemies away from touching it. Now, there are others like Incineroar who have this ability because, of course, the showboating, overconfident wrestler, Heel Cat, would try to flex you into a state of intimidation to make you back down from the wrestling match. The sharp vision of 43 Pokemon is protected through the ability Keen Eye, which sounds like Keen Eye from Brother Bear, and I love that movie. Moving on, though, Keen Eye prevents the Pokemon from losing accuracy, for example, from moves like Sand Attack. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Keen Eye is leading the party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are actually 50% less likely to be lower level. The outside of battle stuff could actually be incredibly helpful if there's a rarer Pokemon that are higher level, or if you do want a lower level, then you don't use it. But it's just that's going to help me in Nuzlocke in the future. Now, a lot of bird Pokemon have it because they have incredible vision. Oddly enough, though, we also see Hitmonchan here, which it can throw punches too quick to be seen by the naked eye, which is clocked in at 300 miles per hour. So it has to at least see where it's throwing those fists. Also find it funny that Sableye has it for 2 reasons. One, simply because it is a little Stitch-like Pokemon, as it is constantly searching for gems, so it has to have a good, keen eye for seeing these sparkly little guys in the caves and knowing their quality. The other reason is because it doesn't really have eyes. They are literally gems. They do not blink. They are unmoving, unblinking, shining gems. You can't really throw sand into its eyes when its eyes don't even blink to begin with. Now, ironically, skunks and scorpions have very poor eyesight, which, despite that, Stunky and Scorpy can be found here with this ability, which that had me rolling when I first saw it. I sat here and went, wait, does skunks actually have really good vision? I've never known it. I pull it up, I start going through a couple of sources just to double, triple, quadruple check, and every single one of them said skunks have very poor eyesight, and I died. I was laughing so incredibly hard, and I'm never gonna forget this one. It's things like this that help me remember what Pokemon have what abilities. Now, you could at least explain that Scorpy doesn't get a loss of accuracy because it's used to having blinding sand thrown in its eyes all the time, so it doesn't have to worry about that. Up next, we have 41 Pokemon that are too good to touch the ground, as they have the ability to Levitate. Levitate causes the Pokemon to be raised, like Flying-type Pokemon. Raised Pokemon are not affected by Ground-type moves, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, nor Arena Trap. Although, a move like Gravity could ruin this and bring the Pokemon crashing to the ground. Ghosts, some Psychics, some Pokemon with wings, flying or floating Pokemon, that's who you find with this ability. Funny enough, though, we do not find Magnemite with this, so somehow you can hit the floating boy with some electricity. Now, the Tynamo line has this ability as well, making it the only Pokemon that does not have any weaknesses. I'm crossing my fingers because every single time I make a bold statement like that, I am wrong. Yet when I do full research and make a theory, I'm usually fairly close to being spot on. So I'm crossing my fingers here, knock on wood. Also, that's assuming that somebody doesn't use a move such as Skill Swap, which will swap abilities between the two Pokemon. Pokemon such as Latias and Latios have it mainly because they just don't touch the ground. They're based off of the Martlet, which is a mythical bird that just doesn't have legs and again is said to never touch the ground and forever be flying. It's also a shame that they actually took away the ability to levitate from my favorite Goofy boy Gengar, as once he gained legs from his previous two forms, he was far too powerful and they had to nerf him clearly. And then they took away his legs with his Mega and Gigantamax form. Now, there are no Pokemon that have Levitate as a hidden ability, and while this is the case for most abilities, it is something that I would expect someone to have. But the one that honestly weirds me out the most is simply Carnivine having Levitate, but this could be explained by two parts of its dex information. One being that it walks on its tentacles, the other being that it attaches itself to trees. Simply put, vines will climb up trees to reach sunlight and outcompete other plants. Our Carnivine here isn't actually levitating, but if you were to see it in a very dense jungle, then you wouldn't see the vines and it would appear to be levitating in front of your eyes. Unless you look at Pokemon Legends Arceus and then it's clearly floating and I don't know what to say anymore. I have no idea. To take the words from another, it eats flying bug, it is flying now. That's it. You are what you eat. Refusing to allow external pressures to ruin their concentration, we have 38 Pokemon with Inner Focus. Inner Focus prevents the Pokemon from flinching, for example, when attacked by a move like Headbutt, or a Jirachi with Serene Grace and a King's Crown. We'll discuss that trauma later. Pokemon with a strong mind like Kadabra, Pokemon like Girafarig, who actually has a face on its back end, so that way it can never be snuck up on and surprised. Even Pokemon that are constantly shaking, whether it be in fear, anxiety, or just absolutely freezing, such as Snorunt, which actually other ice types also find themselves here. The reasonings for why these Pokemon have these abilities are all over the place, but I think there's just like a secret joke happening with quite a few of them. Now, we do see a lot of fighting types with this ability, Pokemon that are constantly training, preparing for themselves to be struck, and continue striking back without flinching. Darumaka, for example, has an internal fire that gives it tons of energy, while the Galarian form can literally focus on the energy within its body to expel cold air. So it's not that it's not gonna flinch, technically in lore ideas. Instead, it just has internal energy that it pulls out constantly. It has an internal energy that it focuses on. The last two interesting ones to note are Dragonite, which is honestly just a very big Pokemon that once it does get into a fight, it's gonna go into an uncontrollable rampage, and it will just not stop no matter what until it destroys what has made it angry. So it is definitely focusing hard on that internal anger. The other interesting ones are actually the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. My baby Suicune, I love you. And to me, they always seem to have this next level intelligence that suggests that they are unafraid of whatever is in front of them. Kind of helps with the idea that they've already died once, so what do they have to be afraid of? They know an afterlife exists. Now, before we continue, I just want to thank you for watching the video so far. It means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel and go the extra mile, please become a member. For as little as $3 a month, you do get benefits, you get emotes. In addition, this month is a great month to become a member, as there are some really fun additional milestones that are being created. As on January 20th, I am doing a membership marathon, and the more members, the longer the streams, and the more fun things that are going to occur. One of them being, if I hit a certain milestone, being at 150, then every member that I get for the rest of this month, I will draw their Pokemon, their favorite Pokemon, by memory. So, not only do you get to support a channel that you get to watch, but you also get something in return, and that's what I like to try and do. It also, again, helps the channel a ton. If not, then thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, as that itself means the world to me, and consider sharing this with those that you think would be interested. Now, back to the video. Now, the plants are here, as 38 Pokemon have Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll doubles the ability bearer's speed during bright sunshine. Plants! I mean, this quite literally is why plants can turn water and carbon dioxide into food, as it is found in green plants and some algae and bacteria. It gives our plants that green pigment and allows them to photosynthesize. It's literally just, it's straight science. What's more interesting, though, is what Pokemon don't have chlorophyll, which includes Cacnea, which is only mimicking a cactus, and are very carnivorous Carnivine, even though Venus flytraps do actually photosynthesize. It just gets necessary nutrients not found in the soil by eating insects. So what does this mean for those Pokemon? Not much. Not every Pokemon can have 4, 5, 8, 20 abilities available to them, although I have made many claims, and supported claims for that matter, that Cacnea is not actually a cactus. It is instead something that is mimicking a cactus and has some cacti abilities, as is seen with many different Pokemon of many different types. So if you want to learn about that, if you want to learn about all the grass types, if you want to learn about all the ghost types, go watch my videos on those, as I explain every single one. Taking part in the signature Joestar technique, we have 34 Pokemon with the ability Runaway. Runaway allows the bearer to flee a battle with a wild Pokemon without fail, even if the opposing Pokemon has used a move like Mean Look or Bind, or has an ability such as Arena Trap. Pokemon with Runaway cannot switch out for another Pokemon, only flee. It does not allow the Pokemon to flee from trainer battles. We have small scurriers like Rattata here, because my god, have you ever seen a mouse run? I have! They are incredible at getting away. Fast sprinters like Ponyta and Rapidash have it as well. After all, Rapid and Dash is literally in its name. How would it not be able to get away? Cowardly Pokemon that run at the first sight of battle, such as Dunsparce, and others that will use their environment to their advantage to get away like Apom, and are quick at that as well. There are also a number of other bug Pokemon that have it as a hidden ability, such as Wurmple and Caterpie. Lillipup also has it, which is kind of adorable to me, since I used to have a little Yorkie, and yeah, let me tell you, that boy can book it like you would not believe. The funniest of them all, for me at least, somehow manages to be Oddish, who is just a body and legs, so he has to run away. 34 Pokemon love the band Queen, as they have the ability Pressure. Put you down on me! Put you down on you! Don't know why I had to go the more rock version of it rather than the classic rock, but here we are. Anyway, no, actually, it's just putting pressure on you, as Aerodactyl and a number of other intimidatingly powerful Pokemon and legendaries exert their pressure on you. Pressure makes any attack targeted at the ability bearer, regardless of whether it hits or not, use 2 power points instead of 1. I think it's power points. I've never actually checked, and it's just funny to say PP. Now, outside of battle, it actually has an effect. If a Pokemon with pressure is leading the party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are 50% more likely to be higher level. I want you to think of the last time that you were put under pressure. You tried harder than you would normally. You, in turn, use more energy. So, in the case of Pokemon, their own infinity energy is what fuels their moves. So, if they are using more energy because of pressure, they can't use their moves as much. Other than the legendaries, we do have Weavile, who is a savage attacker in groups, so they do put on the pressure in battle. And Dusk Noir is an actual beautiful example, since it represents the Grim Reaper, death itself. And I have never seen anyone more under pressure than when they are confronted with the possibility of death. Now, we do get your Royal Majesty demanding your attention, your loyalty, and your service, as Vespiquen does have this ability as well. And, I mean, yeah, sure, some people get nervous around royalty or celebrities after all. I don't. We all go to the grave. We all die eventually. So I don't know. I'm just going to be me, and you should too. Respectfully, of course. Now, the Bisharp line does have this ability as well, considering they're basically pawns, bishops, and kings, being soldiers in chess, and it all goes back to the royalty idea again. And once again, we get another funny example, as we have the Pokemon that dives deep into the pressurized ocean and is one of the largest Pokemon of all time, Wailord. And Wailmer, actually, they both have the ability. But, again, they only have it because it's a pun. 33 Pokemon keep beat with their own tempo. It simply prevents the Pokemon from being confused. By keeping tempo, keeping beat with your own rhythm, you calm your mind. Alternatively, if you don't have that much of a brain to use, such as if we look at Slowpoke, you can also just live in a constant state of confusion or just being unaware. Can't be confused if you're already there. And I will say it now, there are a number of abilities that seem to primarily belong to the dumb Pokemon, and I don't mean that in a vicious manner. I mean that based on literally what the Pokédex and demeanor of these Pokemon has been portrayed as. They are dumber, less intelligent Pokemon that live carefree lifestyles and are happy. Alternatively, you could be fickle like the Glameow line, which are known for wanting their own way rather than compromising. As such, you can only follow your own tempo and you refuse to adjust. The fun ones are the ones that like to dance, like Lilligant, and then the ones with it as a hidden ability are the Lotad line, since the Ludicolo also likes to dance to its own rhythm, its own tempo. Get it? More puns. Esper is in a constant state of anxiety. Again, if you're already confused and constantly anxious, you can't be confused. And then there's Tannabous, which, well, which own tempo may be what they kept in order to produce the rest of the family that they have in your party when you weren't looking. They really turned this house into a home and this mouse into a mome. 31 Pokemon destroy your crops with Swarm. Swarm increases the power of Bug-type moves by 50%, 1.5 times. When the ability bear's HP falls below a third of its maximum HP, it is known in-game as in a pinch. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Swarm is the leading party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are twice as likely to appear. It's bugs. It's literally just bugs have this. I mean, I will note it is very fitting that certain Pokemon, such as Nimble and Lokix, have it, since they are locusts, and they are, whether in real life or biblically, said to cause famine through eating all the crops, which, I mean, yeah, that is an issue in real life, no different than a swarm of mice or any other swarm of creatures. Water blasts through walls from the 30 Pokemon who have the ability Torrent. Same thing as Swarm in battle, but with water types. Only the water starters have this ability, with exception to Panpour and Simipour somehow. Maybe because their heads look like water spouts. I mean, it does state that high pressure water expelled from its tail is so powerful that it could destroy a concrete wall. Though, in reality, it's probably just because the Pand and Simipours were just guaranteed secondary starters in Pokemon Black and White, of course also matching the normal trifecta of water, fire, and grass. Thick Fat keeps 30 Pokemon nice and insulated. It reduces the damage taken from fire type and ice type moves by 50%. Interestingly, many Pokemon possessing this ability already take reduced damage from those types. A Dugong or Walrein with Thick Fat would take 1/8 of the normal damage when hit by an ice type move. And honestly, it is just super powered insulation, no different than what you would expect in the real world, at least when it comes to the cold. So why don't we just take a quick tangent and talk about how Thick Fat works in real life, because as stated by National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, blubber is important to most marine mammals, such as whales and seals. The thick layer of fat provides insulation from cold ocean temperatures. Blubber is also important because it stores energy that can be broken down to provide the animal energy when food is unavailable. So, for example, Weddell seals live in Antarctica and have more than 2 inches of blubber. Considering their massive weight of 400 to 600 kilograms, 880 to 1320 pounds, that could be up to 240 kilograms or 530 pounds of pure blubber. But there's more fat where that came from, because if we look at bowhead whales, which live in Arctic waters, they can have 43 to 50 centimeters, 17 to 20 inches of blubber, thicker than any other whale's blubber layer. And for good reason. They're diving deep. They are getting colder when they dive even deeper. Actually, that might not be the case. It's because it's not frozen underneath. Either way, they gotta stay warm. Yeah, they've gotta eat a lot too. There's a lot of energy that has to be used to stay warm and to stay moving in these frigid waters. So you need a lot of fat. And of course, we see other Pokemon that would obviously have this ability. Snorlax, the Azraline, Hariyama, Cetoddle. Odds are, if it's thick, there is the chance that they got some thick fat. Though there are others that do have it as a hidden ability, which one of them being Appleton, because it's an apple that weighs a ton. Get it? God, this video is full of puns and it's gonna murder me and everybody. Now, in actuality, Appleton actually only weighs 28 pounds. Gotta make sure I actually clarify that, because I know somebody in the comment section is gonna be like, well, actually, it only weighs 28 pounds. It doesn't weigh a ton. Go outside, touch grass, socialize with somebody, please. Learn how to get a joke. Now, we will make the next two very easy, as we have Overgrow and Blaze, both having 30 Pokemon that know them each, and they are the same as Torrent for its info, except it is for grass and fire types respectively. Can you guess who has these abilities? That's right, the starter Pokemon and the monkeys. Though deep inside I would like to believe that they have these abilities due to their bond with the trainer, the bond between trainer and Pokemon. They try harder when pushed to the edge, and it's all because they know how much effort it took to come this far. They've been with you since the beginning of your journey. So, as a result, they draw upon the last of their strength, bolster themselves up, get their second wind, and go for one final push. Sandvale keeps the desert dwellers hidden, as there are 29 Pokemon with that ability. It raises the ability bearer's evasion by 20% in a sandstorm. It also gives immunity to sandstorm damage, if they are not already protected by being a ground, rock, or steel type. Outside of battle, if the leading Pokemon has Sandvale while traveling in a sandstorm, wild Pokemon are only half as likely to appear. Of course, many of the Pokemon who have this ability are ground types. There are a couple rock types as a hidden ability, and one steel type who has it, being Earthworm. Many of the Pokemon here just live in sandy or rocky environments where you'd expect the winds to whip up a sandstorm, but there are a few weird ones here as always. For example, Wiglet and Wugtrio, which are pure water, although they are based on garden eels, even being literally called the garden eel Pokemon. And according to Bristol Aquarium, the real-life straw-like creatures that look like seagrass are a type of eel that embeds itself into the sea floor, and there are over 30 types of them thought to exist around the world. They get their name because of how they stick out of the ground, and of course, that looks very similar to our wiggly friend here. So they'll dig themselves into the sand to protect themselves. They live 35 to 40 years, and the reason they actually do this is because there are predators such as dolphins, sharks, and triggerfish, which will eat them. I guess Palafin is not as much of a friend as we thought. Other Pokemon with this ability are ones such as the Cacnea line, since they camouflage themselves in the desert, pretending to be cactuses. Once a creature seems to be weakening, they will stalk them, whether they are Pokemon or human, until they collapse and can be taken as prey. Actually, that would be Cacturn, not Cacnea. Either way. The only other outlier here is the one Pokemon that is not a grass type yet evolves via Sunstone, being the only one to do so, the Helioptile line. They do thrive in the desert after all, considering that without this sun, Helioptile itself would become very weak and sickly. And the desert is a perfect place to soak up as much direct sunlight as possible. So you may as well adapt as the lizard you are to live in such a harsh environment. Did you see that item on the ground? Well, it's too late to pick it up now because the 29 Pokemon with the pickup ability already got it. When another Pokemon on the field uses a single-use held item, a Pokemon with pickup will obtain the used item if they are not already holding anything. And it can be used again. Pokemon with pickup will also obtain an item thrown at them with fling if they are not already holding anything. And that is actually really funny. Imagine having an item thrown at you that would actually be valuable because your opponent didn't think it would matter if they ate their berry or not. Now, here's the part where I get to start discussing changes depending on what generation is in. Such as in generations 3 to 4, pickup has no effect in battle, which is what I'm used to. Now, outside of battle, this is the one you're most commonly aware of, as when a battle ends, any party Pokemon with pickup has a 10% chance of picking up an item if they are not already holding an item. I'll also say, because it reminds me of it, one of the best Pokemon features of all time is having a Pokemon follow closely behind you in the games, as they also always had a chance of picking up an item. And with a Pokemon who has pickup, you just get more stuff without that one being in the lead. Items picked up range between potions, great balls, ultra balls, and rare candies, up to leftovers and some TMs even. Better items have a lower chance of being found. Furthermore, higher level Pokemon will obtain better items. So the Pokemon that we see with this ability are ones such as the greedy Meowth, who does like to hoard goods, Apom, considering monkeys do like to take items from people all the time, let alone whatever they find, curious little cubs like Teddiursa, and then Pokemon like Phanpy, which elephants are actually known to use and make tools. According to Global Sanctuary for Elephants, both captive and wild elephants have been known to manufacture and use tools with their trunks and feet. Such tools may be used to swat flies or to scratch a particular itch or obtain food that is out of reach. Elephants have also been observed digging holes to drink water, then ripping bark from a tree, chewing the bark into a ball, then turning it into a plug to fill in the hole, preventing the water from evaporating. African elephants have been seen using tree trunks and heavy branches to weigh down fences so they can climb over them. Asian elephants in India have been known to break electric fences using logs and clear the surrounding wires using their tusks to provide a safe passageway. Imagine having evolved millions of years to then produce probably the most powerful fencing known to existence, only for an elephant to say log. Zigzagoon is a classic Pokemon with this ability. Munchlax has a very similar stash, but it is made out of food, and I think Pumpkaboo having it is actually pretty cute since it's supposed to be, you know, a Halloween Pokemon trick-or-treat pumpkin cat ghost thing that actually just takes advantage of Halloween to steal trick-or-treaters away. Now, Pick-a-Peck and Trumpink also get it because apparently woodpeckers are also creatures that can use tools, are known to be intelligent, and cache away their food. Drinking water is more than just a necessity, it's a lifestyle for the 28 Pokemon with Water Absorb. A Pokemon with Water Absorb heals a quarter of its maximum HP when hit by a water type attack. This ability is going to typically be held by Pokemon that are made up of water or rely on water to stay alive, but not because they need to actually drink it or have to breathe underwater like fish do. No, this is instead for the Pokemon like the Wooper line, whose skin will dry out without moisture, or the Frailish line that are jellyfish whose bodies are mostly composed of water. Practice is also here, considering cacti are known to be able to hold water for long periods of time in order to survive within the desert. Wellspring Ogerpon does embody water, so it makes sense that water would heal it. Volcanion needs water in order to perform any of its steam-based moves, as it does not generate water within its own body. And the funniest, once again, of all, goes to Dracovish and Arctovish, since they are incorrectly put together Pokemon and abominations that I love, but will otherwise die without water in the traditional sense. I mean, Arctovish itself actually has its head upside down, which is the whole like, oh, it must have died because it couldn't eat normally. No, it never existed because that wasn't how it was supposed to be put together. And then as for Dracovish, it can walk on land, but it can't breathe on land. It has to walk underwater, otherwise it will die. It'll suffocate on land. The only Pokemon with this as a hidden ability that actually catches my interest is actually the Dewpider line, because they are based on the Diving Bell spiders, the only currently known spider that lives its entire life underwater, which is pretty cool if you ask me. 28 Pokemon don shell armor in order to protect themselves from receiving a critical hit. The thick-shelled Slowbro, which literally states that the shell is an impregnable armor. Cloyster's shell is harder than diamond, while Kingler cracks Cloysters open and bash each other over heads, so makes sense why either of them would have this ability. And the list goes on with many of our other shelled Pokemon. It is fairly self-explanatory, as this also includes turtle Pokemon. 28 Pokemon are rushing as fast as they can to hit harder with Hustle. Hustle increases the ability bearer's attack by 50%, however, it also reduces the accuracy of all physical moves by 20%. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Hustle is the leading party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are 50% more likely to be a higher level. It is specifically physical, so it makes me think of people in shows who are moving as fast as they can. Maybe they notice, someone's in danger or they need to get to somebody, whatever it might be, they are running top speed, and then they use the momentum of their body to throw their punch. This means, yeah, it would be harder to aim, as you might not even be throwing the punch or kick right. Think of it like high jump kick. High risk, high reward. Lots of damage, but you might miss. Now, a couple of small Pokemon do have this, such as Alolan Rattata, the Togepi line, Corsola. Heck, the bird that helps Santa deliver presents throughout the world in a single night has Hustle, as we look at Delibird. You gotta move fast if you're delivering all those presents after all. And then finally we have Darumaka, which is incredibly hyper, so it explains why they have Hustle. Though, there are some more funny ones, as always, such as Dino and Zweilous, but not Hydreigon, simply because the first two forms have hair covering their eyes in the first place. So that explains the accuracy loss. And again, Squawkabilly is back, as it is a greaser thug, so of course they're gonna be the ones to hustle you for some money. I mean, look at those pompadours. Please do not fight fire with fire against the 27 Pokemon that have Flash Fire. When a Pokemon with Flash Fire is hit with a Fire-type move, it does not deal damage, but instead raises the power of the bearer's Fire-type moves by 50%. Subsequent hits do not raise the power even more, but the effect remains while the ability bearer is in battle. Again, literally do not fight fire with fire. This is an ability typically held by fire Pokemon. Ones that have super high core temperatures, or ones that release intense heat, like Arcanine, Ninetales, and Rapidash. It's fairly self-explanatory. You're only gonna make the fire rage higher and stronger if you don't heed the warning. 25 Pokemon don't know how to take a hint, as they are oblivious. Oblivious makes the Pokemon immune to gender-based moves and abilities, specifically Attract, Captivate, and Cute Charm. You thought I was kidding there for a second. No, you may as well give every single male Pokemon the possibility of having Oblivious as an ability. I know that would be one of my abilities when I was younger. Heck, I am still called Oblivious by my girlfriend. Now, of course, Slowpoke does have it. Jinx is too enamored with its own dancing, and there's a couple of fish that have it. I mean, there's plenty of fish in the sea, but if none of them are paying attention to you, then how are you supposed to get a date? Though Feebas having it makes me a little bit sad, because it could be compared to being treated so bad in the past that you don't really know if the compliment is serious or not, so you're unsure how to react and you get uncomfortable. You'll get past it one day, I assure you. It's just takes a little bit of time, little Feebas. Now, it is also interesting that Salandit and Salazzle have it as an ability, since Salandit are mistreated by Salazzle in the reverse harem that Salazzle has created. And it's just an egotistical sign of power. Salazzle doesn't actually care how much the little Salandits love it or anything like that. She is going to use them, they're going to have children, and they're going to move on just out of, well, ego. To continue the line more than anything, not out of love. So technically it's not oblivious. It knows what it's doing. It just doesn't care. In the end, though, power to her, I guess. I mean, the Simps should wisen up just a little bit. Are you poisoned? Are you burned? Are you paralyzed? Any other condition that affects your ability to fight? Well, get some guts like the other 25 Pokemon and smile in the face of death, growing stronger instead. Guts raises the ability bearer's attack by 50% when inflicted by a major status ailment, poison, burn, paralysis, freeze, or sleep. If burnt, the Pokemon does not suffer the usual drop in attack. All other effects of the status condition remain. For example, losing HP each turn by poison or burn, speed drop by paralysis, or being unable to attack if they are paralyzed, frozen, or asleep. Now, honestly, the perfect modern anime example of this would actually be our flashy Sound Hashira from Demon Slayer, Tengen, because that boy was poisoned and fought even harder in spite of it, and that is a beautiful visual representation. Now, it is honestly given typically to fighting types. Protective communal Pokemon like Ursaring and Swallow, and I mean, it even extends to Pokemon like Shinx, which they are communal as well. After all, you usually fight harder when there's people to fight for. Alternatively, for those fighting types, they're once again literally no better than a shonen protag loving the thrill of a good challenge. Get ready for another ability that I'm pretty sure most of my audience has, as 24 Pokemon have Insomnia. Insomnia prevents the ability bearer from falling asleep, both from moves by other Pokemon like Sing and self-inflicted sleep like Rest. If a sleeping Pokemon acquires Insomnia from, let's say, Worry Seed, it will wake up on its next turn. Drowsy is here, and it eats dreams, so I assume it needs to have Insomnia so that way it can stay up at night in order to do so. Mega Mewtwo Y has grown its intelligence even higher, and it has been shown in real life that anxiety correlates with intelligence. So, theoretically speaking, actually not theoretically, scientifically speaking, the smarter you are, typically the more anxiety you will also have. So, that's great. And to answer your question, yes, I do have a level of insomnia, though I do not see myself as being hyper intelligent. I just know how to memorize this information and like organize it if I don't memorize it and present it to you. Now, honestly, a good chunk of the Pokemon here are just active at night or creepy crawlies like Ariados and Spidops. Heck, I mean, Spidops are special ops spiders, so they might even use the guise of night to help camouflage them on their mission, and it again makes sense why they would have insomnia. Nobody is more hard-headed than the 23 Pokemon with Rock Head, which protects them from recoil damage. Pokemon like Marowak of course have this ability since they're protected by a freaking helmet. Others have slammed their heads into everything in their path repeatedly to the point of reinforcing their actual skull, like Rhyhorn, which literally does this all the time over its 6-mile diameter territory. The only other one here that honestly grabs my attention is Tyrantrum, which, being a T-Rex, it had a biting force so strong that without such a thick skull, it would not be able to even live, as the pressure of biting down would be so incredible that its own skull would have been shattered. Now, you might be asking, what is the level of pressure that a T-Rex actually bites down with? According to Smithsonian Magazine, the maximum is 12,800 pounds. That would turn your bones to dust in an instant if you were lucky and the teeth hit you right. You might see them as cute and cuddly, but if you pet them, you'll be left in shock by the 22 Pokemon that have static. If a Pokemon with static is hit by a move making contact, there is a 30% chance the foe will become paralyzed. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with static is the leading Pokemon, it is 50% more likely that a wild Pokemon encountered will be an electric type. This is pretty self-explanatory, as many Pokemon with static let off some sort of discharge constantly. The Pichu line, the Voltorb line, Electabuzz, Mareep, heck, even Zapdos, as it has a hidden ability for static. So how about I just take a quick tangent and instead explain how static electricity even works. So when you are moving two objects against each other, you're dragging atoms against each other, and those atoms have electrons. If the energy transfer is not balanced, then the next time you touch something and you get that big old shock, that is literally just the atoms discharging and rebalancing themselves. This is why it's super important for gas stations to have rubber insulators, because when you get out of your car, do you know what you were touching? Your clothes were touching each other. You were touching your car. Is the car leather? Is it faux leather? Is it some sort of cloth? What kind of cloth is it? No matter what it is, no matter what material there is some level of transfer occurring. But is it happening evenly? We don't know. And if you touch something metal and you have to discharge, your discharge could cause a massive combustion. So that's why we have insulators and all that fun stuff when it comes to gas stations. And they even tell you right there, hey, make sure to touch this when you discharge yourself. Pretty fun and interesting, isn't it? Feel bad for the first person who had to find that out personally. Or the number of people. There's no way they figured that out immediately, right? Ugh. The lizards are here, as there are 22 Pokemon with shed skin. The Pokemon may heal its own status problems, which it has a 1 in 3 chance of healing. Burn, paralysis, sleep, poison, or freeze. Don't know how shedding skin gets rid of the sleepiness, but whatever. I guess you're like wiping away the sand in your eyes. I don't know. Now, I am partially wrong technically, as each of the Pokemon here do shed in some capacity, but are not necessarily lizards. Bugs like Metapod, Kakuna, and Pupitar shed their cocoons. The Ekans line and Dratini both shed their skin regularly, and then, as stated, you have the lizards with Cyclizar and Scraggy, because yes, the pants on Scraggy are its skin in all reality. I think they also have a thing where, like, the baggier their pants skin, the more, like, top tier they are, like, the higher they are ranked. Pretty sure that's the case. 21 Pokemon have a hot bod, and I'm no furry, I'm talking about Flame Body. If a Pokemon with Flame Body is hit by a move that makes contact, there is a 30% chance the attacker will become burned. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Flame Body and a Pokemon egg are both in the party, the number of steps required to hatch the egg are halved. There are some obvious Pokemon here, like Slugma, who has an incredibly high internal temperature, making their skin hot to the touch, with no real outliers to talk about here. Don't get pricked by the 20 Pokemon with poison points lest you want to be poisoned. The opponent has a 30% chance of being induced with poison when using an attack that requires physical contact against this Pokemon. Pokemon like the Nidos and Quillfish are obvious contenders for this ability. This also extends to the Badoo line, which, you know, every rose has its thorns, Venipede line, and they have their little spikes and fangs, and then, of course, even Skrelp. Now, Skrelp is based on sea dragons, which are essentially cousins to seahorses, and to my knowledge, and info from sources such as Greater Cleveland Aquarium, they are not poisonous. The closest we actually get is the Blue Dragon Sea Slug that is incredibly cool, but whose sting is incredibly lethal. Do not touch them, I am telling you now, bad. Now, it's fairly easy to understand on the surface why Poison Point works, but let's talk about how Pufferfish in real life achieve this, as our Quillfish and its Hisuian variants actually produce their toxins in a very similar way. Pufferfish aren't born toxic. Instead, they are believed to synthesize their deadly toxin from the bacteria in the animals that they eat. They release it through their skin, though it does not spread into the water. It is not in their skin, that is not toxic. It is instead released through their internal organs to their skin, and specifically from their liver and ovaries. And through ingestion, injection, or abraded skin, you can get poisoned. Dolphins like to get a little bit of poison as a treat in order to get high, because somehow they know the exact amount of contact they need while playing with them to get high before it gets deadly. Now, before we do move on, I do want to say I'm very excited to talk about dolphins when I eventually get to Generation 9 of my ecosystem series, to delve real deep into the pit of depravity and reveal the sins of dolphins, and Finizen for that matter. 20 Pokemon have careers as bomb diffusers with the ability Damp. Damp prevents all Pokemon on the field from using the moves Self-Destruct and Explosion. It also prevents damage to the Damp Pokemon only from the ability Aftermath. I cannot express how many times that stupid Hindenburg blimp of a Pokemon Drift Blim has made me scared, because I knew Aftermath would be hitting me, or it had the chance of it, and I never knew Damp could do this. Now, of course, water Pokemon or creatures that live in damp places, such as Paras and Parasect, who need a damp environment in order to grow their mushrooms better, would have this ability. They literally just walk over, put their hand on the fuse, and just psst, bomb no go boom. There are 19 anti-vaxxers here, as 19 Pokemon have natural cure. If somehow somebody is an anti-vaxxer and you've been watching any of my videos, I'd get out. I'm flat earthers too. Just go. Just go. I'm a man of science. Just get out of here. Now, Pokemon with natural cure have status problems healed when they switch out. In truth, this ability belongs to Pokemon that are actually in the medical field, or Pokemon that truly do have healing abilities towards themselves or others. This includes Chansey, Celebi, and the ones that regenerate as their real-life version do, such as the Staryu line and Corsola. Though not Galarian Corsola, because that thing is dead. We're going to need some Necromancers to bring that one back. Now, we also see Trevenant with this ability, as it does serve as a guardian of the forest. Altaria heals others with the power of its songs, and Pawmi... Why does Pawmi have it? Right, so Pawmi actually rubs its forepaws together to release electricity, and then, just like a defibrillator, boom, just brings you back. Pretty clever, and they even have Revival Blessing as a move that they can learn. Fun little medical Pokemon without even directly saying it. If you are caught in a thunderstorm, don't stand too close to these 19 Pokemon, as they have Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod forces all single-target electric-type moves used by any other Pokemon on the field to target the Pokemon with this ability, and with 100% accuracy. This includes the status move Thunder Wave. The ability is most useful in double and triple battles. When hit by the move, it deals no damage to the ability bearer, but raises its special attack by 1 stage. Lightning Rod will activate for an electric-type hidden power, but not electric-type judgment, because that's literally God's lightning. The ability is also overridden by any other Pokemon becoming the center of attention from the moves such as Follow Me or Rage Powder. Now, there were some changes, and in Generations 3 to 4, Lightning Rod did not increase special attack nor give immunity to electric-type attacks. It also did not activate for the Hidden Power electric move. So while there are electric-type Pokemon, they do have this ability, so it makes sense that they would get hit by lightning, absorb it, throw it into their electric organ for storage later, a little snack for later. We do have other Pokemon that act as grounds for electricity, where electricity would prefer to go as it discharges evenly, and that would be through Cubone and Rhyhorn. Making sense scientifically, we even get Mega Sceptile to have it. That's because Mega Sceptile is said to climb up trees to the top when there is a storm, and it raises its tail high as it then takes the lightning strike in full force in order to prevent the forest from setting ablaze. I kind of wonder why they know this. I mean, maybe there was a random situation where they had a Mega Sceptile out, but Mega Pokemon shouldn't be happening naturally, right? Right? Unless when Pokemon were first around, they were all Megas. It's theoretically possible, but we'll talk about that in the future, maybe one day. I mean, after all, we do know that Magikarp used to be a lot more powerful, similar to Gyarados, then devolved down into Magikarp, but then Magikarp can evolve into Gyarados. It's kind of like a Final Form Frieza situation. He kind of goes to his first form in order to reserve power because it's not necessary anymore, and it saves energy, and nature's all about saving energy. Now, when I found out the next pair of Pokemon have Lightning Rod as an ability, it caught me off guard, as we find Golding and Seeking with it. And I know it's because of the horn, and I know Lightning Rod is supposed to just nullify the damage, but again, before the modern, like, Gen 5 onwards, it would take the damage. And I find it a lot funnier to imagine a Golding or Seeking being like, I got this, I'm gonna save all the water Pokemon, jumps out the water and just gets completely charred by a lightning bolt. It paints such a fun picture in my head. Not that I have anything against the Pokemon, it's just cartoonish. And because I realized I didn't explain it, if you don't know what a lightning rod is, they are typically a, like, literal rod made of copper and aluminum that acts as a source for which lightning is going to strike in an elevated area, rather than risking, say, a farmhouse, because a farmhouse is a singular, probably the tallest building, object, whatever, in a wide, flat area, and will end up causing lightning to be attracted to it. So you put a lightning rod wherever you're going to put it to absorb the electricity, disperse it evenly, and not start a fire. 19 Pokemon are apparently made of glasses. They have clear body, preventing other Pokemon from lowering their stats. In actuality, though, I will say Tentacool does have a semi-transparent body, since it is 99% water, 1% poison organ, and that is not me exaggerating. This is also relatively the case for a Pokemon like the Dreepy line, but there's something a bit more special here, as the majority of the Pokemon here with this ability do have pure bodies, not just transparent bodies. The original Regis, for example, as they are made of pure rock, ice, and steel. Carbink and Deontay, which are representative of a flawless diamond. Pokemon made of metal like Clink or Beldum, both of their lines have it, as they need heat to become purified, and none of their bodies are actually clear in the slightest, except, I guess, Regice. But what do you say when someone is genuinely honest? When they have pure intentions, they have clear intentions. And that's where this comes in. They are the purity of their elements in full form. 18 Pokemon practice Karma, as anything done to them will happen to you with their ability Synchronize. If the opponent causes a burn, paralysis, or poisoning of a Pokemon with Synchronize, the opponent receives the status condition too. Self-afflicted status conditions, for example through the use of an item, are not passed on. Really is like Karma. Now in generations 3 to 4, bad poison, so like toxic, is only passed on as regular poison. And outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Synchronize is the leading party Pokemon, there is a 50% chance of each wild Pokemon encountered having the same nature. Now, the majority of the Pokemon here are just psychic types. Aberline, Mew, Natu, Ralts, so on and so forth. And the only exception is actually Umbreon, but that might simply be because it is introduced in the same generation and is supposed to be the opposite counterpart to Espeon, who also has the ability. This also, in the end, suggests that Synchronize is potentially mentally taxing, and even real life supports that it takes an immense amount of effort, mental timing, and practice in order to synchronize with others in any way for that matter. Whether that be dancing, swimming, or knowing your best friend and what they are thinking about without them having to utter a single word. Yell all you want, but these 17 Pokemon aren't listening, as they have Soundproof. Soundproof grants the Pokemon immunity to all sound-based moves, preventing all damage and their effects. This includes moves such as Boom Burst, Bug Buzz, Chatter, Clanging Scales, and more, for a total of 26 moves currently. The funniest being Confide, actually, as one of them, because they literally are not going to listen to your deepest, darkest confession, making it safe for you to just tell them anything. The Pokemon who have this ability are often associated with loud sounds or the absence of sound to begin with. The boom that a Voltorb makes when it explodes, the cries of the Wishmer line, which, just for Wishmer, are at a minimum equal to that of a motorcycle and upwards to a jet plane when it is loudly crying. And even Mr. Mime, who is a silent Pokemon itself. Though Snover and Abomasnow alongside Buffalins did catch my attention with it, as they have it as a hidden ability. Now we can explain our snowy friends as When snow is covering the ground, it hushes the sound of the world. Honestly, the way that the snow makes the world quieter, even in ambience, you can tell such a strange difference. It seems so much more empty, and there's some sort of comfort that I have in it, and it's one of my favorite times of the year when there's that fresh snow, and there's no cars, there's no people. It's just silence. It brings me a sense of peace like no other. Meanwhile, with Buffalint, its afro actually absorbs damage from impacts, so you can always assume that it also absorbs sound like a squishy foam. 16 Pokemon have a strong willpower that will not rest with the ability Vital Spirit. Vital Spirit prevents the ability bearer from falling asleep. This means that it also prevents the use of the move Rest. Outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Vital Spirit is the leading party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are 50% more likely to be a higher level. Now, there is a range of Pokemon here as always, from the inconsolably angry Mankey line to the yappers with infinite energy like Lillipup and Rockruff, from the Vigoroth to the constantly training Tyrogue, and again, even Delibird delivering presents in an entire night. We also find Galarian and Mr. Mime here, since it always is in a cheery, tap-dancey mood, and then both the Electabuzz and Magmar line can have it as a hidden ability. This is likely because they derive their energy from electricity and heat, meaning as long as they have a supply, they never need to rest. Also, their final forms, Magmortar and Electivire, kind of only get their forms after you give them what looks like a generator item and trade them. So I feel like they either absorb it into their body or absorb so much energy from it, that's what causes their evolution. I should do a video explaining every single little way Pokemon evolve. 16 Pokemon get the worm as they have Early Bird. This allows the Pokemon to awaken quickly from sleep as it causes the condition to last for half as long. For example, half of 3 turns is 1.5, and they round it down to 1 turn then. And even when the number of turns to sleep is 1, half of it rounded down is 0, so the Pokemon just wakes up instantly. That's powerful information. Now, the Pokemon here aren't even mostly birds. We do get Girafarig, since giraffes have evolved to sleep for as little as 30 minutes a day due to the sheer amount of predators that they face in the wild. Thank you, Atlanta Zoo. Then we also have Ladybug, as it has evolved to learn to avoid the birds by getting up early itself. Seedot does the opposite actually, considering it will polish its shell once a day at least, and it has Early Bird still. You'd think as a prey species that it wouldn't do this, but it is clearly doing so in order to get eaten and spread throughout the surrounding area like other plants want with their seeds. A lot of this ability can really just be chalked up to natural adaptation within nature, whether that be, on the prey side or the predator side for that matter, as you either need to avoid the early bird by becoming one or become an early bird in order to catch your prey unawares. Striking at your most vulnerable spots with intensity and accuracy, we have the 15 Pokemon with Serene Grace. Now get ready for this explanation, because Serene Grace doubles the chance of moves' secondary effects of occurring, specifically stat changes, status ailments, or flinching. It also increases the chance of flinching due to the held items King's Rock and Razor Fang from 10% to 20%. However, note that those items do not affect moves that already have a flinch chance. Serene Grace does not affect status moves or the Pokemon's critical hit ratio. So, status moves, but it does increase the secondary status effect of regular attacking moves, for clarification. Now, let's give you some examples. Shadow Ball normally has a 20% chance of lowering special defense. With Serene Grace, it is boosted to 40% chance. Air Slash has a 30% chance of causing the target to flinch. With Serene Grace, it's boosted to 60. If the item King's Rock is held, it does not increase that percentage, but rather if the move does not cause flinching, then there is now a further 20% chance that the target will flinch from King's Rock. This means that Serene Grace with Air Slash and King's Rock gives a total probability of 68% chance that the opponent will flinch. And who can just run in with an ability like Serene Grace and Iron Head someone over and over and over again, headbutting you until your body is concaved into the ground? Jirachi. Now in Generations 3 to 4, Serene Grace does not increase the flinch chance of King's Rock or Razor Fang. In Generations 3 to 5, Serene Grace does not affect the move's Secret Power. Again, the most common Pokemon to have this is Jirachi, as it is the only ability that it has. But since we have Doctor Pokemon like Chansey, who know how to heal you, they also know exactly where all of your vital organs are. As such, they do have Serene Grace, hitting you in all of your critical points to make you flinch until you can't move anymore when they win the battle. This also extends to the Togepi line, which actually I would attribute it more to luck than skill, while still holding great power since they are considered an incredibly lucky Pokemon. Same would go to Dunsparce, as it does take incredible luck to find a regular Dunsparce in the first place, as per lore on it based on the Tsuchinoko. Finally, the last one that catches my attention is the Deerling and Sawsbuck Pokemon, as you might say that someone moves with the grace of a deer. I haven't heard anybody say that in forever, but I know it's a thing. You might end up crushing these next Pokemon in a loving hug, as the next 15 Pokemon have Cute Charm. If a Pokemon with Q-Charm is hit by a move that makes contact, there is a 30% chance the attacker will become infatuated. It will not infatuate Pokemon of the same gender, genderless Pokemon, nor those with the ability Oblivious. Infatuated Pokemon have a 50% chance of being immobilized by love each turn, and they are unable to attack if they are immobilized. Pretty strong coin flip. Now, outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Q-Charm is the leading party Pokemon, the chance of encountering a Pokemon of the opposite gender is 2/3 chance. Honestly, the Pokemon with this ability are just the Pokemon that are considered cute inside of the world of Pokemon. This goes to the Cleffa line, Igglybuff line, Skitty. It actually skips Baneri and goes straight to Lopunny, and somehow Enamorous. Which, I mean, we can actually explain because it is the love-hate Pokemon, and its other ability also plays into this. Melodic is also here alongside Stuffle, as they have it as a hidden ability, which I am very surprised that we don't find Primarina here, since Melodic and Primarina are said to be rivals in beauty. Really sticking it to the mermaid, and I think who wins that battle. Faster, yet faster. 14 Pokemon with Speed Boost will reach Mach Speed just as long as they keep moving. Basically, their speed stat is boosted by 1 stage at the end of each turn. Now, only the Yanma line, Ninjask, and Mega Blaziken have this as a main ability, all of which are known for moving fast. And even Mega Blaziken flat out states that it moves faster and faster with each movement, growing so fast to eventually begin burning the surface of its body due to air friction. If you want to hear more on that, go check out my video explaining every single Mega Pokemon. Warmed up and ready for battle, protecting them from cramps, we have 14 Pokemon with the ability Limber. That way, they're unable to get paralyzed. This includes our lithe felines like Persian, Glameow, and Purloin, fighting types like Hitmonlee and Hawlucha, but most interestingly, the Pokemon without bones are here as well, like Ditto and Clobbopus. Which, I guess you're always limber if you're nothing but muscle and fat. Then we also do see Baneri and Lopunny here as well, which goes back to the idea of being dexterous and lithe. Insult these 13 Pokemon as much as you want, but it won't affect them as they are protected from burns with Water Veil. It's our watery Pokemon like Wailmer and Fitizen, though it is weird since they have more rubbery insulated skin while Godine doesn't. But even all of the other Pokemon who have it as a hidden ability are the same, as they too are Pokemon with rubbery thick skin, or at least deep sea Pokemon. Weaselline is kind of an exception here, though they still have their rubbery floaty, and then Huntail as an eel might actually be covered in a layer of mucus instead. Either way, they're all water types, and burning things underwater do be kind of hard though. 13 Pokemon see electricity as a neat little treat that just recharges their body with ability Volt Absorb. A Pokemon with Volt Absorb heals a quarter of its maximum HP when hit by an electric type attack, including Thunder Wave. Changes include in Generation 3, Volt Absorb does not activate for Thunder Wave. It's literally just electric types with no real surprises here. Oh no, the legendary genie, whose name is literally Thunder Us, heals from something that causes a thunderous noise, healing from electricity. Who would have guessed? Though, to be fair, there are a ton of electric types with electric organs that store electricity, but at least these Pokemon heal from it, like Chinchou and Lantern, who have bacteria in their little bulbs that actually produce the electricity for them. So technically you're helping them culture the bacteria, I guess? Go figure. Serving you a plate of water, we have 13 Pokemon with the ability Rain Dish. A Pokemon with Rain Dish will recover 1/16 of its maximum HP during rain after each turn. The only Pokemon with this as a main ability, not hidden, is the Lotad line, which literally has a Rain Dish on their head in the form of a lily pad sombrero. The rest of the Pokemon are all water types with exception to Morlo, which is a mushroom, and as a mushroom might be made up of about 92% water, as mushrooms may be found around. Explains so much why they shrivel up when cooked. So Morla is absorbing all the water, it's going in the cap. It could be considered a rain dish of sorts, theoretically speaking. Meanwhile, Pokemon like Pelipper is filling its bill like the pelican from Finding Nemo. If you are afraid of looking at bugs, imagine how they feel looking at you, as we have 12 Pokemon who may see hundreds of you with their Compound Eyes. Compound Eyes raises the ability bearer's accuracy by 30%, and outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Compound Eyes is the first in the party, Pokemon that can be holding items have that chance increase from 50 to 60% for common items, 5 to 20 for uncommon, and 1 to 5% for rare. So what I'm understanding is we just slap a Pokemon like Venonat and Kato, Joltik, or whatever else onto a team alongside a Pokemon with the ability Pickup, and you could just make out like a bandit. My get-rich-quick schemes in the world of Pokemon grow even larger. Just gotta get that infinite energy Ludicolo band going. All jokes aside though, a compound eye is a visual organ found in arthropods such as insects and crustaceans. It is a single eye made up of many smaller visual units called ommatidia. The more ommatidia per eye, or ommatidia probably, that sounds like a different word when I say it, the sharper the image they will see, as they're like the pixels of an image that combine to create the full image. Though I will note that it is weird that Joltik is like one of the Pokemon that has compound eyes, considering spider eyes are more similar to our own. And to kind of be fair, a lot of the spiders, quote unquote, in Pokemon aren't really spiders. They have the wrong number of legs for starters, but I'll save that for a future discussion if I ever cover a video regarding every single bug Pokemon. Covered in dust, 11 Pokemon have a coating to protect their bodies with shield dust. It just prevents the added effects of attacks from being taken. For example, if an attack also has a 10% chance to burn, these Pokemon won't get burned by that attack ever. This actually belongs to Pokemon such as Caterpie, Weedle, and Wurmple lines, even Venomoth and Scatterbug lines, since their real-life versions of their winged final forms have protective coatings in the form of scales. This is super important for butterflies to counteract the elements of the world, primarily water. That's why they don't like to get wet. And it's also why you need to be very careful if you ever do touch them, because you might pull off those scales. Stay away from these 11 Pokemon, as they have sharp teeth and massive claws that cut deep with Hyper Cutter. Here we find crab Pokemon, Pinsir, Trapinch, Mawile, and each of them have some powerful snipping or biting power. I mean, heck, even Mawile is here, and originally, as it starts out, it could only just bite through boulders, because, you know, that's not impressive at all. And then Kingler, as we stated, can break through Cloyster, whose shell is 10 times harder than Diamond. How anything stays intact in the Pokemon world is actually a mystery. Also, there has been a study showing that the coconut crab, you know, the one with the massive claw, has a grip that is 10 times stronger than our own. So yeah, Hyper Cutter checks out as an ability for all the crab Pokemon. Be careful breathing near the 11 Pokemon with an effect spore, as even contact with them may cause poison, paralysis, or for you to fall asleep. Now, Effect Spore does belong to each of our mushroom Pokemon, considering that mushrooms do spread through spores, though it also belongs to Vileplume and Gossifleur lines as a hidden ability, which I guess you could say Pollen is kind of like a spore, but it's not a spore, so that makes it incredibly weird in my eyes. Though, if we really want to be particular about it, both Rafflesias and cotton plants have incredibly minuscule seeds, so maybe that's our tie-in. And yes, to clarify, inhaling mushrooms can cause a series of health problems as small as simple allergic reactions, all the way to a full-on internal fungal infection. There was the one dude who I believe injected a mushroom tea into his body, into his veins, and then the mushrooms grew inside of him. That is some heinous stuff right there. 11 Pokemon prepare for war and don their battle armor, which protects them from critical hits. Now, this is really just to add a new sort of flavor than having to say these Pokemon have shell armor, and instead you give them battle armor, also protecting them again from critical hits. As we now have Pokemon such as Kabuto, Anorith, Skorupi, all with hard carapaces to protect them, but not shells as they want to actually state them. Although we do get some legitimate battle armor in the form of the Sea Ship Cat Berserker, the Roman Gladiator Phalanx, and the helmeted type Null. Speaking of helmets, even Cubone and Marowak have this as a hidden ability as well. The idea, again, is that it protects them from a surprise attack that otherwise would, in real life, be a more critical hit, like a shot to the kidneys. So, yes, it is literally just protective body armor in many different forms. Sticky fingers is usually what you call somebody who likes to steal from others, but what about the 10 Pokemon with Sticky Hold? Well, they are protected from being stolen from. Sticky Hold prevents held items from being taken or switched. Outside of battle, though, if a Pokemon with Sticky Hold is the leading party Pokemon, the chance of hooking a Pokemon during fishing increases. Again, these are all abilities I never would have thought of, and I mean, I guess this is one I'll never have to think of again as new games are created and we see Pokemon just roaming around or, in the water. We don't ever have to fish. Maybe one day they'll reintroduce a secondary way to catch specific Pokemon and you have to do it through fishing. Because we don't dive underwater in the 3D games. Well, we do in the DS ones, but not on the Switch. The Pokemon who have goopy or sticky bodies are the ones that have this ability. So we have Grimer, Gulpin, Shellos, since it has that sticky ichor, that purple ooze that it likes to release when it's squeezed like a sponge. And then we have Trubbish, which I guess, if you were to squish old garbage, yeah, you're going to get a nasty goop to come out of it. Now, at first I actually questioned why AbsolGore has it, and it turns out it's because that cloth is actually a membrane that keeps its body from dehydrating since it lost its shell, which also has made it miserable. I honestly would be pretty miserable too if I was forced as a snail to live without my shell because my trainer wanted me to evolve. I'm pretty sure it's also just a joke on Escargot after all, like taking a snail and accelerating it to higher speeds. AbsolGore, snail go, Escargot fast, no go fast. Snail no go fast. Ever just walk through an area and you get a whiff of something and you just freeze, you tense up in that exact moment? Well, there are 9 Pokemon with the ability Stench that know exactly what that feels like, or at least knows what it looks like, because a Pokemon with Stench has a 10% chance of causing the opponent to flinch when hit by a damaging move, provided the ability bearer strikes first as usual. Stench does not stack with the items King's Rock or Razor Fang, so an ability bearer holding either item will keep the flinch rate at 10%. And in generations 3 through 4, Stench had no effect in battle. Meanwhile, outside of battle, it made wild Pokemon only half as likely to appear. Easy way to avoid people, just smell like garbage. Got it. Pokemon with this ability include Grimer, Stunky, and the Trubbish lines. All of them make perfect sense considering their makeup or their inspirations. This also extends to the Gloom and Coughing line, and ultimately, all of these Pokemon are known to produce a foul odor constantly, or at least be able to do so. Freaking Gloom releases a stench that can be smelled for over a mile away for that matter. Sometimes in life, you just need that one special person to balance you out. And the 9 Pokemon with the ability Plus are looking for their partners with the minus ability. Also that way their special attack will be increased by 50% in battle. Now of course, Plusle was the only one with this main ability until we got the Clink line and Toxtricity. Clink are attracted magnetically to each other and then combine. Meanwhile, Toxtricity does have its high and low forms, which are often encouraged to be together. Otherwise, we just kind of see the Mareep line and Dedenne with the ability. Mareep having it is actually kind of funny because wool is often associated with static electricity, explaining also its aforementioned static ability, and the need for a regular discharge as it searches for a Pokemon with minus or is at least sheared. With a strong enough magnet, no metal can escape, so the 9 Pokemon with Magnet Pull ensured that Steel types won't be able to escape battle. Interestingly enough, the Pokemon lines associated with magnet or magnetism like Alolan Geodude, Magnemite, and Nosepass all have this ability, though we also include Meltan since it is also made of metal and consumes it in order to grow larger. There are 8 Pokemon who can guide your way as a lantern in the night with the ability Illuminate, which has no effect in battle, but outside of battle, wild Pokemon are twice as likely to appear. Basically, bright light attract Pokemon. This, of course, goes to Pokemon such as Staryu and Chinchou, our lightning bug Illumis, and the bioluminescent Morlul. Again, very just Pokemon that can release light off of their bodies. The one that threw me off was seeing Watchog have this ability, and it turns out the yellow stripes on its body actually glow and scare away predators. Kind of looks like a crossing guard vest the more I look at it, so I can understand why, it'd be reflective, but I was, again, surprised to see that it full-on glows. We have found the opposite of Plus with the 7 Pokemon that have Minus. It's really just the same as Plus in effect, and it has the Pokemon that you'd expect. Minun, the Clink line, low form Toxtricity, but then we get Electrike and Manectric who have it as their hidden ability. This is actually incredibly interesting to see because going back to the Plus ability, the Mareep line is the only one that has it as a hidden ability, and now we have Electrike line as the only one that has it as the minus ability. That just kind of solidifies the whole idea, or at least potentially solidifies the idea that these are just wolves going after our sheep. 7 Pokemon have their heads in the clouds happier than ever before with the ability Cloud 9. Now, Cloud 9 suppresses all effects brought on by weather, including move power increases, end of turn damage, accuracy changes, relevant abilities, and so on. The only Pokemon that have it normally are Psyduck and Golduck. Meanwhile, as a hidden ability, we have the Lickitung line, Swablu, and Drampa. Now, I get why we see most of them. It's a pun with Swablu while also being a happy Pokemon. Kind of the same for Drampa, again, the whole clouds idea, though it lives in the mountains, so weather wouldn't really bother it, and it is based on a weather-changing mountain dragon. We could say for Psyduck that nothing bothers it since it would be water off a duck's back, meaning that it has no effect on the person or situation. And this actually lines up even better as brought up by one of my viewers as I was streaming for 8 hours doing a chunk of the research, not all the research, like a good chunk of the research, as Wow brought to my attention that actually from a pun in Japanese, the ability translates to no weather, but it's homophonous, Sure. To their word for carefree. So, thank you. But again, there's still one Pokemon here that really bothers me, and that's Lickitung. Like, why Lickitung? Does it actually not have anything that bothers it? I mean, it kind of seems like nothing bothers it, like it doesn't really care, but other than just general speculation, I have nothing for once. I mean, even reading through their info and what yokai they're similar to, I have nothing. But because I read through all of it, I now know that Lickitung has, on record, the longest being an 82-foot long tongue that can also move with the dexterity of the human hands. I am personally disgusted, but that's somebody's fantasy out there, so good on you, I guess. I'm moving on. There are 6 Pokemon that are living photocopiers with the Trace ability, allowing them to copy the foe's ability in place of their own. Now, I was ready to make a drawing joke, and I found out that Smeargle does not have this ability at all. You know, the painting Pokemon. And I guess you can't really trace a painting, but still. Mega Alakazam and the Ralts line have it, as they can tell the future or read the emotions of others. Porygon and Porygon 2 have it because they are computer programs intended to copy others in order to learn. But again, Smeargle, paint your Pokemon, not having it. I'm kind of disappointed. Now for this next one, I just want you to simply imagine Dr. Facilier from, you know, Princess and the Frog, and how its shadow grabs people and their shadows and moves them in real life. That is basically what this ability, Shadow Tag, is, and what these 6 Pokemon do. Mega Gengar, Wynot, Wobbuffet, and the Gothita line have this ability. In fact, they're all hidden abilities for them. With the Gothita line, it is simply because they can predict the future, see lifespans, and tell you of your own future, meaning that you cannot escape your fate. For Wynots and Wobbuffets, it's not that they don't let you escape, it's that, you know, it's not even that they don't run away, it's that once you do hit them, they immediately counter, launching a devastating blow as they are just punching bags. And finally, for Mega Gengar, it can see through multiple dimensions. It is able to stalk you, as it can watch you from a separate dimension. And it gets worse, as it doesn't have to completely come back to the dimension that you are in. It can just reach a hand out, grab you, and pull you into whatever dimension it's gone into. There is literally no escape. It will find you anywhere from anywhere. And I kind of need a Mega Gengar plush or something at some point. Petting 6 Pokemon may result in a rather unpleasant experience, as they have Rough Skin. When a Pokemon with Rough Skin is hit by a move that makes contact, the attacker receives damage equal to 1/8 of their maximum HP. Multi-hit moves activate Rough Skin on every strike. In Generation 3, the damage from Rough Skin was actually 1/16 of the maximum HP, and this ability does belong to the Carvana line, Druddigon, and as the hidden ability for the Gible line. Now, we can explain Gible through the fact that they are literally land sharks, needing rough skin to survive the grating of the ground, even though Garchomp can also fly, kind of just prepares them for anything. Now, sharks in real life do actually have a rougher skin like sandpaper. According to The Atlantic, when viewed under a microscope, shark skin is composed of ribbed, dragon-esque scales layered like shingles on a roof, which looks pretty sick, to be honest, and we can expect this to be what many of our rough skin holding Pokemon to look like under a microscope. Why have big power when you can have huge power like 6 Pokemon have? The attack stat of the Pokemon is doubled with the Azrael line, Mega Mawile, and the Bunnelby line. I guess for the Watery Mouse, it does get a heck of a lot stronger just by living constantly in rushing waters. Mega Mawile went from crushing boulders to destroying steel beams, and Diggersby is actually incredible at construction sites, as it is said to be as strong as an excavator. Power to the construction workers. Honestly, I worked maintenance for some time, and I usually get along really well with people who are hands-on, the people who are getting things done. It kind of goes back to the one joke I love to say. There are 2 books. There's the book that's about this big that says, oh, this is how the nerds think things get done. And then there's a much smaller book that says how things actually get done. Don't get me wrong, I'm a nerd myself, but at the same time, you just can't abide by every little, rule. As long as the job gets done, and it gets done right. Get it done the first time, and never do it again. 8 arms, 6 tentacles, but only 5 Pokemon with the ability Suction Cups. Suction Cups prevents opponents forcing the ability bearer to switch out or flee via the moves Roar, Whirlwind, Circle Throw, Dragon Tail, or the item Red Card. Now, this is fairly easy to explain with the Pokemon that have it: Octillery, Lileep, Cradily, Inkay, and Malamar, as they do have actual suction cups, or at least tentacles in the case of Lileep, as it anchors itself to rocks underwater, and then also uses its tentacles that we can see to just grab fish and eat them. I have a question. Do people even actually make Darude Sandstorm jokes anymore? I almost got rickrolled a month ago from some random link, and I just know when I'm going to get rickrolled these days. It could be a meme with a link under it. It could be a million other things, and yet somehow After not being rickrolled for months, I still always know when a link is going to take you to a rickroll. I feel it in my spleen. Anywho, something, what's that song called? We have 5 Pokemon who have Sandstream to summon the Sandstorm. Sandstream creates a Sandstorm when the ability bearer enters the battle. The effect lasts 5 turns unless it is cleared via Airlock or Cloud 9 or replaced by another weather condition. If multiple Pokemon with weather-generating abilities enter the field on the same turn, each weather condition will activate consecutively, with the fastest Pokemon moving first. In other words, the resultant weather condition will be that of the slowest Pokemon. And prior to Generation 6, it lasted indefinitely upon activation. Here we find Tyranitar, Hippopotamus, its evolution, and Gigalith, all of which simply explode sand from their bodies all the time anyway, except Gigalith, who lives in the mines and construction sites and is capable of blowing away an entire mountain if they absorb enough sunlight. Now, I don't want to be the person who ever found that one out firsthand, but then again, we used to, as humans, rig ridiculous amounts of TNT against mountains to just blow a tunnel through them, so I guess Gigalith could have just been doing that, and it's just a bit exaggerated. We're still stuck in the desert, and all the water is evaporating as we've entered a drought with 5 Pokemon. Drought creates harsh sunlight when the ability bearer enters battle. The effect lasts 5 turns unless it is cleared via Airlock or Cloud 9, replaced by another weather condition, blah 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 blah. You know that already. And honestly, sunlight affects a lot of other moves or abilities like Solar Beam, Solar Blade, Synthesis, Morning Sun, Moonlight, Growth, Chlorophyll ability, so on and so forth. There's a lot. And it does belong to Mega Charizard Y and Groudon as main abilities, but Torkoal, the coal-eating tortoise, also gets it from all that volcano living. And then the Vulpix duo do get it as a hidden ability. All fire types do have some form of incredible heat-emitting capabilities after all, so this is to no surprise. Typically being a sign of steam, we have the purifying evaporation of water with 4 Pokemon who have white smoke. These 5 Pokemon just have really high body temperatures or regularly emit white smoke, even though Torkoal is here again, who is said to emit black smoke as a healthy sign of, well, its body. Of, well, its health, I guess, to be redundant. Now, if water does touch them, it is going to evaporate pretty quickly. A lot of the fire type abilities just revolve around heat, steam, smoke, sun, and doesn't have too much variation. But these are natural abilities or hidden abilities after all, so it's not much to be surprised by. With poison in their bodies, you don't want to drink the liquid that comes out of the 4 Pokemon with Liquid Ooze, as it damages attackers that use a draining move on them. Here we find Tentacle and Gulpin, which obvious why. They're just nothing but water and poison, or in the case of Gulpin specifically, it's nothing but gastric acid. So if you really want to use Absorb and try to absorb poison into your body, be my guest, it's gonna hurt. Now with this next ability, technically only 1 Pokemon has it, but it does have 4 forms, as Cast Form transforms with the weather using Forecast. It turns into one of its 3 forms, sunny, rainy, or snowy, all because Cast Form itself is a mix of a weather charm Teru Bozu, which is supposed to bring good weather and stop rain, in addition to looking like a water molecule in Inspiration. Meanwhile, Cast Form was created with the intent to study weather, though artificial weather does not change its form, no matter how hard scientists tried. I'm kind of honestly amazed that Cast Form only has those 3 additional forms. I expected it to get more one day, but that opportunity may have actually passed with Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire years ago. I realize it hasn't been in an open world Pokemon game in a while. I say open world with heavy quotations because of Sword and Shield, but I think you get the point. It would be fun to at least see a Cast Form following right behind you, and as you walk into different areas, it does transform on the spot, but that may be something that they were trying to avoid. Breaking the rules again and again, we have the 3 Pokemon who refuse to listen with their ability Truant. Truant causes the ability bearer to only attack every alternate turn. On the even turns, it will say the Pokemon is loafing around. If a Pokemon with Truant uses a move that requires recharging on the second turn, such as Hyper Beam, it will recharge on the same turn the Pokemon loafs around. Moves where the user prepares on the first turn and attacks on the second, such as Solar Beam or Fly, cannot be used. The moves Worry Seed, Entrainment, and Simple Beam do not work on Pokemon with Truants, and it can technically be skill swapped away. However, neither Slack Off, Slacking, or Durant actually learned Skill Swap, which all three are the ones that have this ability. Now, Slack Off and Slacking know it normally. It's not a hidden ability, and it makes sense as they're too lazy to want to listen. I mean, Slacking literally lays down, and eats all the grass in an area, and only moves when there is no grass within reach. Then it probably just moves over 7 to 8 feet, and then eats all the grass in that radius, diameter, whatever, again. As for Durant, it actually has it as a hidden ability, and I say that likely represents the Queen Durant, who stays in the nest and pretty much does nothing but focus on reproduction as it lays eggs. Which, don't get me wrong, do you see how many ants die regularly? They need thousands of new soldiers every day in order to actually survive as a species. I actually, getting curious, looked it up and found out that anteaters can eat up to 35,000 ants and termites a day, according to National Geographic. So could you imagine losing a month's worth of hard work, let alone a month's worth of children? I mean, as a human, you probably can, not really imagine that because you can't really have a child in 1 month, but you get the point. Sometimes it's nothing more than raw determination, unwavering strength, or more specifically, pure power that drives a Pokemon, such as the Meditite line. They are the only 3 Pokemon with the pure power ability, as it doubles their attack stat. Their power is actually unlocked through the method of fasting and meditation, which was thought to do so in some capacity in real life through practices such as Zen Buddhism. The idea is that you release yourself from your earthly needs and gain something that is not tangible. Maybe you unlock the paths, the chakra within your body in other cultures, and it's something that we see in multiple forms of media. And while personally I do not like regular Medicham, Mega Medicham is one that I do really like and I will always give credit to because its design is fantastic. There are only 3 Pokemon that have skills that marvel the mind in their beauty. Yeah, it's an ability I never actually heard of until now, so my joke is a bit softer as we have the ability Marvel Scale. Marvel Scale raises the ability bearer's defense by 50% when inflicted by a major status ailment: poison, burn, paralysis, freeze, or sleep. Though all of the effects of the status condition do remain. It is literally just supposed to represent beautiful scales that are otherwise seen as a myth of sorts, as only Melodic, Dratini, and Dragonair have it. All of them being very mystical Pokemon, and honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if their scales held some sort of magical properties that do provide healing, or at least there were myths of it, as we would see with other Pokemon. The flavor text on it does specifically state that it ups their defense if they are suffering, so it's just a defense mechanism in the end as well. It's supposed to protect them further if they are struggling to survive, so that way they don't just die from an external predator attacking them and their body can focus on fighting whatever disease is in their body. Through the power of Magma, 3 Pokemon protect their bodies from even being touched through Magma Armor. Magma Armor prevents the Pokemon from being frozen, for example, from moves like Blizzard. Outside of battle, it also has the required steps needed to hatch an egg. Slugma and Magcargo are pretty obvious since they are quite literally living magma slugs, technically lava since they are, above the surface. And then the other Pokemon that has this is actually Camerupt, which does have lava in its body that erupts every 10 years, or alternatively whenever it gets angry. And that's just a matter of which comes first. And let me tell you now, they get angry when they're hungry. So they get angry fast. Paladins of the Pokemon world, we have 3 Pokemon immune to getting poisoned with the ability Immunity. We have here Snorlax, who can literally just eat muck as if it were a bit of, spicy food. The one creature that leaves grassy fields completely barren of life for 3 years. The same creature that also creates new diseases constantly, and if it touches you, you are basically guaranteed to die. Yet Snorlax, again, can just eat it. Meanwhile, Zangoose is based on a mongoose, and they are resistant to poison, as they will also hunt down snakes. In fact, they'll kill cobras by just biting their heads. And then there's Gligar, which is based off of a scorpion fly, which that is not a venomous creature. despite how terrifying it looks. Though it looks that way to make you want to stay away, and Gligar actually does have poison to use. It isn't full-blown raining outside, no, it's just a drizzle. Yeah, there's 3 Pokemon with the ability Drizzle. It creates a rain shower when the ability bearer enters battle, which lasts 5 turns, and you already know the rest of that as well. Now, Kyogre has it, which clears, as, you know, it is the Pokemon that covered the world in water when it was first created. We have Politoed, which, sure, that's based off of the Koki, and the Koki frog doesn't need standing water to actually reproduce. It actually just needs enough moisture in general. And if you've never heard their sound, because I'm slowly losing my mind, to help break up all the info, let's just listen to it for a second. Okay, that was more than a second, but I needed that as well. Otherwise, again, I'm actually going crazy with all this, and motivation is hard to keep up with when you're just talking about abilities, and I'm trying to make it entertaining to some degree. The only other Pokemon that has this ability would be Pelipper, which is likely because it just has the water spilling from its mouth after scooping up some fish. The fight ain't over until the bell dings. Then you're stuck in the arena with these 3 Pokemon that have Rena Trap. Rena Trap prevents opponents from fleeing or switching out. Raised Pokemon are not affected, which again goes back to your flying types, those that use Levitate, Magnet Rise, or Telekinesis. And outside of battle, if a Pokemon with Arena Trap is the leading party Pokemon, wild Pokemon are twice as likely to appear. This ability is owned by Diglett, Dugtrio, and Trapinch, all of which will create a literal arena trap on the ground. Well, at least the mole Pokemon Diglett and Dugtrio will actually probably just create an area where everything will fall out if you continue to run off. And then Trapinch will create its wonderful little pit for you to fall into as you try to escape it. And yet its conical shape and perfect degree ensures that with every movement and every step you take, the sand just continues to fall more and more and more until you run out of energy and Trapinch gets a nice little meal. Almost as if it was protected by an angel or other creature beyond our own realm, Shedinja is the only Pokemon with the ability Wonder Guard and the mascot for this video's thumbnail. Now, Wonder Guard prevents damage from direct attacks unless they are super effective. Shedinja is the only Pokemon to have this ability, so it means that only fire, flying, rock, ghost, and dark type moves will have an effect. However, Pokemon protected by Wonder Guard are not immune to indirect attacks. Status category moves still work and all end of turn damage will still incur. For example, from poisoning, burns, sandstorms, or hail. Entry hazards, such as spikes or stealth rock, will also damage Pokemon with Wonder Guard switching in. And I giggle because I imagine Shedinja being thrown in and then immediately dying. Attacks that do not take their type into account will also hit, such as Struggle, Beat Up, or Future Sight. Since Shedinja only has 1 HP, any of the above damage will result in an instant knockout. In other words, don't freak out about seeing Shedinja, even if it's randomized and it's like, ooh, just have a Pokemon that can poison or wait for, you know, it to run out of moves. It doesn't have that many to really work with at an early level, so you'll be fine. I was only half joking about the angelic protection, by the way. Shedinja is the literal shell of Ninjask that was shed and given life. It even has a halo, making the connection even more clear that this Pokemon is a spirit if the ghost typing didn't make that already abundantly clear. Able to blend into its environments and completely disappear, all to the point of being so good at hide and seek that it actually gets frustrated when people can't find it, we have the only Pokemon with the ability Color Change, Kecleon. Color Change changes the ability bearer's type when hit by a damage-dealing move to the type of that move. For example, being hit by X-Scizor will change the Pokemon to a bug type. Dual type Pokemon change to single types. If a Pokemon with Color Change has a substitute, the ability does not activate. Color Change activates for the last strike of a multi-hit move. Now, in Generations 3 through 4, Color Change activates on the very first strike of a multi-hit move, thus subsequent hits may not be very effective. This is literally just what a Chameleon does, but to the next level in the end. Honestly, it makes me think of when Randall from Monsters Inc. just keeps getting hit by Boo and just keeps changing patterns with each resulting smack. If we want to get really fancy with it, Octopi and Cuttlefish, one of my favorite underwater creatures, do this to the next level themselves. Not just changing their color, but physically manipulating their boneless bodies. I mean, cuttlefish, I believe, do have some sort of bones in their body like a squid would, and actually making them look like they are the rocks in the terrain that they are residing in. Also, if it's not the cuttlefish that's my favorite, it's probably the taco-looking fish, the Tuzoya. Phenomenal little creature, and I love it. It looks so cute. I'd say maybe that's my favorite crustacean. I think it's a crustacean. Editing Krillic will fix that. And we finish out the abilities introduced in this generation with the one and only, as this ability allows this Pokemon to suppress all effects brought on by weather, including move power increases, end of turn damage, accuracy changes, relevant abilities, and so on. The ability Airlock only belongs to the one and only Pokemon able to put an end between the fighting of Groudon and Kyogre, the Quetzalcoatl itself, Rayquaza. This is all simply because Rayquaza lives in space and the atmosphere itself is actually under its control. Since the ability is called Airlock, a literal airlock is a compartment with controlled pressure and set of doors designed to permit or prevent movement between areas at different pressures. This is very fitting for the Pokemon of our atmosphere, as it is the final barrier between the Earth and space itself. And with that, we have gone through all of the abilities that were introduced in Generation 3. I really did want to actually have this be a video that would encompass the abilities from every single generation, but at the same time, I felt like I was losing some of the details, or I could have lost some of the details that would otherwise be more fun to delve into. And it takes a lot of energy to try and take what is almost literally just text and turn that into something entertaining. So I hope this was entertaining for you. And actually, to talk a little bit further on it, this was supposed to actually be generations 3 through 5 until I realized that this was already going to be a really long video just including the abilities introduced in Generation 3. So if this does well, I would love to do more videos just talking about the abilities from region to region, just like I have videos talking about the ecology of region to region. Once again, though, if you did enjoy, please make sure that you subscribe, share the channel around, even become a member for as little as $3 a month. This is a great month to do so, as I am doing a membership marathon on January 20th, and some of the milestones that are here include drawing all of the members' favorite Pokemon, creating a Pokemon Pokérap with all 1025 Pokemon, and finally, having it so while I play Pokemon Emerald on a live stream, you can affect my game directly, and yes, it will be a Nuzlocke, and it will be free for you to mess with my game. So, those are the goals. You can go check those out, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I want to do. Don't think I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!